Avast ye! Gather round, me hearties, and I'll spin ye a yarn about Stede Bonnet, the gentleman pirate, a man as bold as he was foolhardy, and as daring as he was daft. 'Twas in the year 1688 when Stede Bonnet was born on the fair island of Barbados to a wealthy English family. He had all the riches a man could desire. A fine education, a sweet lass for a wife, and a bounty of land and crop. But despite his riches, a storm brewed within him, a yearning for adventure that could not be quelled. Instead of drowning his sorrows in the local alehouse, or gallivanting off on holiday like a proper gentleman, Stede felt the call of the sea in his bones. So, at the tender age of 28, he kissed his wife and babes goodbye, bought himself a ship, and hired a crew. With naught but a day's worth of seafaring under his belt, he set sail, leaving high society in his wake. Stede took to piracy like a duck to water, me hearties. In just a year upon the briny deep, he and his scurvy crew plundered 53 ships along the eastern seaboard, taking all manner of treasure, sugar, rum, indigo and gold, to name but a few. He even struck up a devilish pact with the infamous Blackbeard himself, their partnership yielding even greater spoils. But alas, Stede's luck would soon run dry. His lack of experience proved to be his downfall, and after a botched raid off the coast of North Carolina, he found himself at the mercy of the colonial authorities. A hefty bounty was placed upon his head, and on a fateful day in 1718, he swung from the gallows in Charleston. Not yet 30 years of age, tales have been told of spectral figures haunting the very spot where Stede met his end. Faces peering through the trees, screams piercing the night. Some say the ghosts of Stede and his fellow pirates still wander the shores, their restless souls eternally bound to the sea. So, me hearties, if ever you find yourself strolling near Water Street in Charlestown, cast your gaze toward the shoreline, and perhaps you'll catch a glimpse of the departed souls of Stede Bonnet and his crew, still searching for redemption on the restless waves. Arr!
We're back, guys. Season 2.
We're back.
Wow, Dayelle.
Wow,
great energy.
Yeah, that was...
Way to lead us in, Dayelle. So we went down south for this one. We are in Charleston, South Carolina, which right off the bat, I've never been. You guys have.
2 out of 3 of us.
Yes, 2 out of 3 have. And we're talking pirates this episode, which we're going to get into. But Deena, do you want to kick us off with a little bit of history of this gorgeous city that you and Dayelle have been able to see in person and I have not?
So, yes, I've gotten to go to Charleston once. It was absolutely amazing. Fun birthday. I had really just gone because you can't mention Charleston without talking about ghosts or paranormal experiences.
Yeah.
There's something spooky and creepy happening. So I was like, yeah, sign me up. So really kind of that stemmed into some research, which is a bit overwhelming.
I would imagine. It's been around for a bit.
354 years since it's been settled. I feel like if Charleston was going to have a Facebook page, like its relationship status would be, it's complicated.
Yes.
We have this British colony, right, that has developed into one of the top 10 biggest tourist attractions in the United States now, when it really kind of whitewashed a lot of history.
Mm-hmm.
Now that we're, bringing it back and telling the real legends. Like, is that an oxymoron?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Folktown style.
We're seeing that it's this low country of an area, something that was referred to as the Holy City because of how many churches and religious backgrounds were settling in this area, really all built on the backs of enslaved or indentured servants. So that's just wild in itself. It's a place that the American Revolution has gone through, the Civil War has been through. One of my absolute favorite British sovereigns, hashtag we love Outlander references, really kind of brought in his hedonistic ways to this area. And I think that also really kind of helped open the doors to things that we wouldn't even believe would be true, like pirates running around.
Yeah. Isn't it crazy? We think pirates are like, they're fake, but no, pirates are
so
real
real.
thing.
Yeah.
They're still real.
Yep.
But they feel like a fictitious character, like a merman.
Yeah, like, from Peter Pan. Yeah.
Yes.
Captain Hook.
Yeah. And it makes perfect sense why it would be Charleston of all places that this would happen. It's in the South. You got a nice climate down there for the most part, minus all the hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, and things like that that they unfortunately go through. But you have this peninsula that's a perfect port, right? When mercantilism and things like that are going on, we got the triangle trade happening, which is what's bringing these slaves into the colonies and just putting the Carolinas on the map.
Yeah. So obviously, because this has such a storied past, and I've never been there, Dale, you're going to tell us, set some visuals for us. What does this crazy place look like?
Okay, so it's like maybe one of the sweetest looking not so little coastal towns. You kind of to paint a picture, there are rows and rows of perfectly painted houses. And one very famous row in particular is called Rainbow Row, which is 13 perfectly pastel painted houses.
It's adorable.
And they're it's a very sweet little area. And it's all cobblestone streets. So you walk down the streets and there's you have the beautifully manicured lawns. You've got perfectly planted porches with giant plants all over the porches and stuff like that. And then you have porch swings. You've got lots of bed and breakfasts are all over the place. Literally, you can't walk down a street without finding adorable houses. And they have some of the best shopping streets. So some of the blocks are very geared towards designer shops and stuff like that. And then you've got coffee shops, you've got bookstores, you've got, literally you name it, they've got it, and it's adorable. And it's really well maintained and manicured, and clearly there's a lot of thought and care put into each of these little houses and stuff. And with that being said, if you walk down what is known as Chalmers Street, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's Chalmers. Chalmers Street?
Probably.
So this particular little house that we're going to talk about is on 17 Chalmers Street. Chalmers? I don't know why I'm having a hard time with that. And it's known as the Little Pink House, and it kind of looks like a little dollhouse. It's very cute. And over the years, it's been updated and kept perfectly pristine. It was originally built out of Bermuda stone, which is known as a forgotten stone. And it gave the house a natural pink hue, but over time they stuccoed the outside of the house, but the Bermuda stone is still there. So underneath the stucco and everything. And so now it's painted pink, but it did used to be naturally pink, which is kind of a cool little tidbit. And this little house is supposedly, and there's a little bit of speculation on this too, it's supposed to be one of the oldest houses in Charleston. And because it's been so well maintained over the years that it's gone through different owners and multiple businesses and stuff like that, but it's still perfectly manicured and it's held up. And the house is kind of unique in the sense that each one of the floors, it's 3 floors, but each floor is one room. So it's very tiny house, and it's kind of like that was the way the houses were built back in the day, where it was just a single room on each floor. And it's still the same. Like they haven't really changed that. It's still just a single room for each floor. So with that being said, the Pink House has been, it was a law office. It was art galleries. And where we're going to kind of tap into the story is very famously, it was a tavern in like the 17th century, and there was a brothel on the top floors.
Fun.
And because of where this house is located, it's in the coastal town. And so, like, obviously you have sailors that come, and with sailors, there are pirates. And so it's known, like, if you ask any local person about the Pink House, they'll tell you that it's haunted by ghosts, and very specifically a female ghost. And there's been like reports of windows bursting open suddenly, despite the fact that there's no one around to open them.
Is this the kind of windows that are like shutters, so they would like blow open two shutters?
That's what I envision.
That's what I want it to be.
Yeah, I feel like that would be the case. And then there's also a ton of reports of footsteps walking up the stairs, and then when you turn around, there's no one there. And so there's been several like encounters of people like in over the years, especially as it was like an art gallery and it was the law office, like these people were experiencing these things. And then one very famous like I guess report of someone feeling something kind of creepy is a gentleman felt the sensation of like skittering down, like a sensation skittering down his spine. And when he turned around, thinking that someone was behind him, like kind of like brushing up against him, he was completely alone in the room. There was no one there. So kind of weird. And
I guess that makes me ooh.
And I know it's kind of like a crazy, like all those different things. So there's lots of different stories out there, and they're all just around the same ghostly figure who is a female figure. And she is usually seen on the top floor of the house, and people have seen her in the window. People have seen her, they say, like wandering down the stairs and then back up the stairs, and she's always wandering, like she's walking around. She doesn't really do anything harmful or like, you know, super scary. I mean, the fact that there's a woman walking around, that's not real. That's kind of crazy. But people have seen this figure, and so like there's this ongoing thing. And with that, the assumption that the spirit is the spirit of Anne Bonny, the very famous pirate. There's a lot of speculation that she ran her business out of this house. Again, nothing can be confirmed, and there's lots of like tales and stories and stuff like that. But with that being said,
Deena, tell us about the badass woman that was Anne Bonny.
Well, I think you make a really good point and kind of like bring it back to everything that is Charleston, because I know when like I started getting fascinated by this area, and especially how long it's been around, right? 350 years. I was like, okay, why is this one of the most haunted places in our country, essentially? What led all these paranormal activities to center in this one area?
Yeah.
And honestly, I just think it's that when you have that much history in one small location, because I mean, it's not like you can walk from one side of Charleston to the other, you know, like very quickly, but it's still small-esque.
It's small.
It's a small city.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like kind of like a Charlotte.
Little
you know,
big.
It's a small city.
Yeah.
But you have wars that have happened here. You have this slavery that went on here. You have epidemics. You have ships that have been lost at sea, right? And you have all of these wonderful characteristics, we could say, that kind of help create this American folklore, which so many people like to say that, you know, America doesn't have its own culture because we're kind of a melting pot. Yeah. But we really kind of started formulating our owns based off of the origins of others, right? So when you bring up Anne Bonny, she is someone who emigrated to the United States with such a interesting backstory, and I still can't with these pictures. I'm sorry. We're gonna have to
just tell people about these pictures, because we've been
these
fascinated all day.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you've ever seen the movie Brave, no, I'm just kidding. So Anne Bonny was this Irish lass, right? She apparently was from Cork, County Cork, right? In Ireland. So she's got this like brave kind of hair. Like, but I think brave was Scottish. But anywho, Irish red huge mane of hair, right? And she's essentially pretty good looking, right? But these pictures either show her scantily clad, we will say, or just complete boobs out.
Yep.
I know. Like all the way, guys.
Yeah.
We're not talking intense cleave. We'll post them to our
No,
folks
but
on
I think
website.
what's also fascinating about that is she's fully clothed except for the boobies.
The collar of her shirt doesn't start until underneath her chest, as does her BFF that we'll talk about, Mary Reed. Same thing. I don't know if it was a quality for female pirates to do that.
Just imagine the strength of like walking up to a guy like, I already know that you're going to stare at my boobs. I'm just going to have them out. Let's eliminate
rock
that.
it.
The only thing I could think is that it's men's clothing.
Primary election day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.
At Grand Canyon University, we believe in equal opportunity, and the American dream starts with purpose. Whether your pursuit involves a bachelor's, master's, or doctoral degree, GCU's learning environments are designed for supportive networking and collaboration. With over 330 academic programs, GCU provides a path to help you fulfill your dreams. The pursuit to serve others is yours. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.
So, anyway, let's backtrack. So she has been a little rebel since she was younger, did not get along with her father, really didn't want to do anything that he pretty much put in front of her, wanted her to get married. She was like, nope, don't want to do that. So she marries out of spite, just to piss her father off. Gotta love that. To a man named James Bonnet, who allegedly was a pirate, but he kind of sounded like a wimpy kind of pirate. She was not.
She was the cooler one.
She was totally the cooler one and kind of got bored of him and eventually set him adrift.
Yeah.
Because she was just like, yeah, I think you need to go into accounting or something because it's not for you.
It's not working.
But she became so well known on the ship, which is called Revenge. And the Revenge actually ties up well with a certain Blackbeard, the pirate.
Dun, 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 dun.
Yeah. But she just became this allegedly violent-tempered expert fencer and really kind of was a boss lady for this time. Loved to be around that kind of environment, and the men really respected her more than a lot of the other ship captains. But I did read this, and I have no idea what it means. So I want you guys to help me with this. It says, when Anne and Mary Reed were also captured, it confessed that they said their sex and pleated their bellies. They pleated their bellies. What the hell does that mean?
I don't have any current pirates on speed dial. Maybe we could throw this into ChatGPT.
Pleated their bellies. The only thing I could piece together
is we're women and we can still make babies.
Yes.
Maybe?
Yes.
Well, maybe that's to do with why they're depicted in those photos also topless. Like maybe there's some tie-in to exposing your chest and belly.
I think you're reaching.
To be like, hey, I feed the babies.
But that was it. Allegedly, when Anne was caught and thrown into jail, she said she was pregnant, so she wasn't hanged.
Right, because they won't hang a woman who is with child.
So there's this whole lore towards her death that some people say she just vanished after she was let out of jail. No one knows what happened to her. No one knows where she was buried. But then we have that she's tied to the Pink House.
Yeah.
Even though There's no
she never
historical
lived
record.
there. Yeah, there's no like history, like paperwork or anything saying that she. But because it was a brothel, I think there's an assumption that she was there quite often.
And
I love that.
And the Powder magazine, which you can still also walk by.
Yeah.
Which I'm not going to lie to you all. I definitely thought it was a real magazine. I thought it was called The Powder. Took me too long.
Takes a little minute.
Took me too long to
You're like, oh my
realize
gosh.
what
They had magazines.
that it was not a magazine. It was about gunpowder and, storing weapons and things like that. But apparently she haunts the Powder magazine, which you can also visit and walk by. And again, no connection to her being there. There's no story that ties her directly to it. I think just, Anne gets a little fickle.
Yeah.
She just wants to bounce
Just
around a little bit.
Around.
Yeah.
Just haunting people.
And that's where we really see, like, all of these ghost stories that we hear from this particular area, any of the urban legends that we're going to talk about, any of the mysteries that come out, there's no real solid evidence to prove that any of this was actually true. And I think Charleston really kind of capitalized on that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so many books that have been put out, published, just like diving into so much of the lore that is Charleston.
And creating some really great stories. I mean, they've creeped me out. And helped inspire, Captain Jack Sparrow with Blackbeard.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that brings it up to our boy, Mr. Blackbeard, keeping this pirate thing going. So this guy,
please say his real name.
His name was Edward Teach.
I feel like Blackbeard is one of those pirates that everybody knows the name, right? Maybe they don't know the story behind him, but like everybody knows. And so many places have used his like caricature.
His likeness.
His likeness.
If you will.
And he has that, just think Captain Jack Sparrow. He's got like the long braids and the big beard, but he was born in Bristol, England as Edward Teach, and
he's also probably an accountant.
He could read and write, which means that he probably came from like a legit family,
a wealthy family.
I think this is just like the most screw you to the parents. I thought Aunt Bonnie had it, but perhaps Blackbeard did. He was like, nope, I'm out. I don't want this. And I'm going to just steal some ships.
I want to just interrupt there that I think that is also kind of the myth of a pirate. Like, we think that they are these ruthless men who just, are
swashbucklers.
Yeah, I love that word. And,
me too.
Go against and rebel against authority and stuff like that. But really, from what I have learned about pirates from all of this, they really were just people who were dealing with overcrowding in their areas, unemployment, things like that, and decided to get into piracy to kind of try and make some luck for themselves,
For sure. Yeah. So Blackbeard, his nickname came from the fact that, again, he had a long black beard, he wore braided hair tied up with ribbons, and to make
so pretty.
To make himself seem more menacing,
take out the ribbons?
No, he'd walk around with pistols slung over his shoulders, and he would keep lit fuses under the brim of his hat, so as he walked, there'd be like a cloud of smoke around his face.
That's intense.
First of all, you're really trusting that nothing's going to burn you and your hair's not going to go alight in flames. But whatever. This dude had 14 wives, so I don't think he really thought a lot of things through.
Wow.
But he was a privateer during Queen Anne's War, which kind of led to what he did with his flagship ship that we all know.
His flagship ship.
Queen Anne's Revenge. That was his big ship. He acquired it in 1718, and he tricked that thing out. He put 40 guns around that bad boy. He was like, I'm taking everyone out. And he loaded it up with several hundred men. He had stolen 4 ships at this time. So 4 ships, several hundred men. They went and set sail to Charleston. And this story is so hilarious because when we were doing the research for this about like, how the hell does Blackbeard have anything to do with Charleston?
Yeah.
Other than he's a pirate.
So much.
So he has this wonderful story about the blockade of Charleston. So he rolls up in and he's like, hey, Robert Johnson, who was the governor at the time, we are going to take ransom all your people. We're going to take Samuel Wragg, he was the South Carolina's provincial grand counsel at the time. And we're going to take him. He was the guy. We're going to take a bunch of people. We're going to steal their things and they're going to hang out on our ship. And we don't want gold. We don't want jewels. We have those things.
You can keep your rum.
We just want a chest of medicine because we are riddled with the clap. Everyone on his 4 ships had STDs, and he was like, I need some antibiotics. My crotch is itching so bad, and I need your help. And so it took like a week of negotiations back and forth, and eventually Robert Johnson was like, okay, fine, we can have the exchange, and he gives them the, all of his medication. It was a 400-pound chest of medication, and after the week, I'm sure wonderful for them, they all got to get their crotches unitchy and they all sailed away. But during this time, it kind of ties to the main story of this. Our boy Stede Bonnet, his ship was overtaken by Blackbeard, and he was like pumped about it because he was such a shitty pirate that he was like, great, somebody else is taking control. Like, I suck at this. And he ended up getting pardoned for his crimes because he was like, wasn't me. He took my ship. I don't know what to tell you. So Stede Bonnet was a little bit of a pansy. Okay, but,
which I swear, I kept reading about all these male pirates that we've all read about.
Yeah.
That in reality, they really were kind of a little frou-frou.
And you know what's so crazy is like, all right, we have all heard the Blackbeard story, right? Yeah. You think he's some prolific pirate that was pirateering for decades and decades and decades. This only went on for like 4 or 5 years of him pirating. Yeah. But after he left the holy city of Charleston, South Carolina, he went back up north to the coast of the Carolinas, and he went to the Beaufort Inlet in North Carolina. And that's where he met his demise. And his crew was bombarded on Ocracoke Island. And
Ocracoke.
Ocracoke? Yep. I've never been there. Have you been there too?
Yes.
Oh my God.
That's where we
worldly.
vacation.
Oh, that's adorable.
Outer Banks, Ocracoke. It's excellent.
There was apparently
and not too far from Charleston. Like
no,
it's like a hop, skip, and a jump. Yeah,
it's a couple hours.
Well, then he sucks even more because a little battle ensued, and Blackbeard and a bunch of his men were killed. This is actually kind of rough. I mean, like, good for him,
dude.
But he was killed, and his body was thrown out to sea. But his enemy took his head and displayed it on the prow of the ship, and like sailed with his head.
He did something.
But this kind of brings us to our next, my next haunting story. We're talking about the pirate house.
Oh, so, okay.
Yeah, the pirate house was built with brick and Bermuda stone in 1740.
I think that's like the main stone used throughout Charleston.
For sure. And it was again, a hot mess express of bars and brothels and drinking, but also all of the things that the pirates had stolen they couldn't sell at the port because they know they have to pay these like crazy high tariffs and taxes. So there was a courtyard behind the Pirates Bar, which is still there to this day, by the way, the Pirates Bar. You can go there. But there was a little courtyard that was kind of hidden that overlooked St. Philip's Cemetery. And they would do all of their like illegal dealings back there so that they wouldn't get caught. But it's actually really pretty. So you wouldn't know, but because of all of the pirates that have gone through there and they call it one of, we found this out in almost all of the things. Everything is the most haunted building in Charleston.
Literally every building.
Every single thing. But lots of people have said that, it's haunted with pirates. It's haunted with the ghost of Blackbeard. It's haunted with the ghost of the poor people that had to work in there. Yeah. But my absolute favorite ghost story is there's a tour group walking along there in the early 2000s. So there's an alley that goes along the pirate house, and one of the tour members stopped, and he had this like super creeped out look on his face, and they were like, "You good, bro?" And he's like, "Nope, I'm not. You don't see him." And then all of a sudden he couldn't speak, and it was like he was in a trance, and nobody could get him out of this trance. And then a couple minutes later, he's like, "You don't see him. You don't see him." And he comes out of the trance, and he said, he touched my neck. He grabbed my neck. He said that he saw a ghost of a man hanging from a tree, which brings us back to our boy Stede Bonnet, who was hanged there. And he was struggling to get out of the noose, and he was hanging up in the tree, and this guy was super spooked out. And this happened in the alley of Pirates Bar. But what's even crazier is everybody says that Blackbeard's treasure is buried underneath this bar which everywhere I'm sure says that Blackbeard's treasure was buried there.
Yeah.
But that's why so many pirates still haunt it to this day.
I wonder, there's like
unfinished business.
When doing some of the research too, I noticed several different mentions of the fact that there's an alleyway between two buildings. I'm wondering if it's in this same area.
I'm sure, because it goes straight to the cemetery.
The gates of hell.
Oh, fantastic.
Are there.
Well, that brings us to my favorite haunting story.
I feel like I heard that in relations with the Unitarian Church, maybe?
There's probably,
There's several, in several different stories and like different sources and places that I was looking at stories.
Yeah.
I kept seeing variations of it. So I think it's one of those, like, it probably has moved around a little bit, but there's a definite tie.
As far as I know, too, some of these areas for a while wouldn't let people in, right?
Yeah.
And then eventually tour
they
groups
became
got permission.
Private, private owners didn't want people.
I'm sure that helped, entice the tourists.
100%.
But if you're going to bring it back to Stede Bonnet, I can't.
No, I'm bringing
come
it.
on, I'm so excited.
I will at the end, but now I'm talking about haunting dogs.
Oh, yay, Pooh!
We're going to Poogan's Porch. So Poogan's Porch, it's a Grand Victorian home that now houses Poogan's Porch on 72 Queen Street. So it was built in 1888. It's one of those places, it's still to this day like a bar restaurant. You
Look
can
at
go
how
eat
adorable
at.
it is.
It's so cute.
Yeah.
Super cute.
And so
but very small on the inside. It's what I feel like for New York City people, we get that.
Yeah.
Restaurants like this,
Super tiny.
aren't that's a home.
I don't know
Yeah.
if you to add to that. I don't know if you went into any of the restaurants or places throughout Charleston, but most of them are itty bitty on the inside.
Yeah.
I stayed on King Street mostly.
Okay.
But I
Those
touch
are
this
more
porch.
modern.
I touch this porch.
Yeah. A lot of the cutesy coffee shops and bed and breakfast, they're all super tiny on the inside.
they renovated the houses that were there.
Yeah, that's what this was. This was a residential home that then became purchased, and the previous owners left so quickly, and they don't know why they left. They have no idea why. They didn't bring their doggy with them, and he was a little wiry-haired white dog named Poogan, and they left him without anything, and the new owners were like, why would they leave such a little cutie pie behind? And they named him Poogan, and the dog became the restaurant, I guess he was the mascot. Yeah. And he would wander porch to porch looking for food. And everybody was like, yeah, give this dog food. He's adorable. So the owners began to joke that the porch didn't belong to them. That was Poogan's porch. It was his porch. And so he was a real dog and not like a restaurant story. And he died in 1979. But they say that you can catch a glimpse of a ghostly dog. I just liked that story. That's not the main haunting of Poogan's Porch.
Yeah.
I just like that there's a fuzzy dog that's haunting you on the porch. But this story is this is really sad. So the restaurant in 1900s was home to this beautiful young little girl named Zoe St. Amand, and she lived there with her sister Elizabeth. So Zoe was a school teacher, and poor girl, she'd given up on finding true love. So she was like, I'm just going to live with my sister.
Sounds about right.
I'm just going to be, she said that everyone in the neighborhood thought she was nothing more than a spinster. And her choice of clothing apparently didn't help in disproving her reputation. She was seen frequently wearing long black dresses and thin framed glasses, which honestly,
she would fit in so well
so
now.
fire.
I think the majority of my closet is just black.
Yeah. So hard times here. In 1945, Elizabeth passed away. And with her gone, Zoe kind of just became super withdrawn, almost like agoraphobic. She was in the house. She never left. She was super, super depressed, and her mental health kind of hit the crapper. And then one night she left the house, and everyone had kind of accepted the fact that she lost it.
Yeah.
And she was walking down the street yelling her sister's name, and neighbors came out to check on her, and they took her to a hospital, but she spent the rest of her life in the hospital. So the ghost of Zoe haunts the house. And okay, so the whole of this state is so, like we said, it's very, very old, right? But these are modern haunting stories, which I truly love.
Yeah.
There is staff members who say that they see her ghost all the time. But my favorite is somebody staying across the street at the hotel, which we're going to talk about in a later episode, across the street from Poogan's. They'll see an elderly woman, which she died when she was elderly, in a black dress standing in the top window, and she looks very forlorn, like she's looking for something. But there is a guy named Mr. Ball who works there as a daytime chef. And so it was really early in the morning. He made himself some coffee and he was going to get going with his prep work, of course. So he heard a knock at the back door. It was a delivery from his produce guy. So he goes, puts his coffee down on the stool, answers the door, brings his produce in, goes back, coffee's not there.
I was so just kidding. I was like, his coffee's
not there. Not only is the coffee not in the cup, the coffee cup is gone. He's like, I am the only one in the building. They're all alarm set. And then he's like, you know what? It's so early in the day. I probably never even poured myself a cup of coffee. I'm just misremembering this.
Yeah.
So then he's like,
moments.
Yeah, because you're trying to like make sense of the situation.
Course.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's super early. I'm not all the way awake. I'm going to pour myself another cup of coffee. Pours himself another cup of coffee. Sits down. Well, then he's like, I'm just going to sit down, start my day, picks it up, puts it down, and now he looks down. His cup of coffee's back. Right there.
Wonderful.
And there's a lipstick mark across the cup.
Yes.
And
you mean to tell me she couldn't even wipe her lipstick off? Like,
I'm proud of her for being so still wearing lipstick. What a lady.
Yeah.
What a lady. So that's probably my favorite one. But there's another one where this poor girl, she was cleaning up at the end of the night. And if you've ever closed a restaurant down, I mean, I've never worked in a haunted restaurant, but if you've ever closed a restaurant down at night and you're the only one in there.
Terrifying.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
Even if it's not haunted, it's terrifying.
It's just creepy.
So she's closing up, she's cleaning up. And then she felt the whole time that she was cleaning, someone was behind her or watching her. You know when you
hate
have that feeling?
Yeah.
So she's
That's
like,
similar to the pink house. That's what
Yes.
so many of the people talked about, that like walking up and down the stairs, you
They could feel
constantly
it.
felt like someone was behind you, but when you turned around, there was no one there.
okay, well, so she starts cleaning. She's like, okay, there is someone behind me. So she looks up into a mirror. So there's a big mirror and she looks up into the mirror and she looks and sees not only her own reflection, but the face of an old woman wearing thin wire glasses and a black dress. And she spoke into the mirror and she was like, because she knows you work there. I'm sure you've heard these stories. Everybody knows. And she says, Zoe, is that you? And she just watched the image disappear from the mirror. What? Gross.
Whoa.
That's so gross. And then there's another one. I mean, like there's a million.
This is at Poogan's.
This is
Porch, like the
Poogan's Porch.
restaurant.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
restaurant.
There's another story about a pastry chef who, very similar to the coffee guy, she was completely alone and she was jamming out on the radio. You know, as you do, you're alone, you're working.
Yeah.
And pastry chefs have to get there so god-awfully early.
Yeah, like
because-
5 a.m.
Yes, they're
Maybe
like 4
more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
4.
we've all watched The Bear.
Yep.
They were in there so early. And so she heard some noise and she was like, who's upstairs? Nobody is supposed to be upstairs. And I think there's rooms upstairs.
Oh, is it maybe like a little bit of like an Airbnb type thing?
I think so.
Well, not bed
and so
breakfast.
she was like, it sounds like something happened. So she goes upstairs and she heard it over her radio, which she was like, that's kind of weird because I'm blasting this. And so she goes upstairs and when she got to the top floor, she's like looking around, she's looking, she doesn't see anything. And then she's like, I don't know. I'm like losing my mind. I'm not going to see anything. So she goes back down to the radio or back downstairs, turns the radio on. And a few songs after this, one of her favorite songs come on. And so she's singing along. And then all of a sudden a voice in her ear is singing along with her. And she turns around thinking one of her coworkers is like playing a joke on her, but no one was there. And again, the alarm was set. So like if anyone had gone in, she would have heard the alarm go off.
Right.
But nothing in there. And she heard like in her ear, another woman singing with her.
I'm telling you, I want to be so skeptical about these stories because I noticed each one was like, and she was alone. You know, the person was alone. And then I think about mine and I was alone. So I'm not going to comment because it could happen.
I buy into it.
Yeah, I think too, like when you are alone, you very much, you're very aware of your surroundings, I think. At least for me, like when I was younger and I'd be like walking home from, you know, my neighbor's house or something to my house in the country where there's no lights or anything. And you start walking and like, of course you're probably surrounded by all kinds of creepy things, but like, you know.
Then your mind's playing tricks on
right.
you.
And you just start like really thinking you hear things or you see things or like that was definitely a branch that just snapped. You know, like
yeah.
there's so much of that. But I think like when you're in a building, you for sure, like,
Yes.
I've worked in like old houses. I used to help stage like antique furniture in like houses that are being like renovated. And I was in this one farmhouse one time, and there was an attic, and the attic was filled to like the ceiling with books, like so many books, right?
My
So
dream,
exciting.
yeah.
However, there were also lots of snake skins. And so it was like kind of terrifying. You know, you're like, probably will find a giant snake, and there were giant snakes in the backyard. So like there are snakes in the, but the weirdest thing about that place is I had only gone there like 3 times. And each time I would go there, I'd end up being there alone for some period of time. And every single time I would go, something weird would happen. A sound of like someone up in the attic when no one else was in the house. There was a door that would just slam shut, but there was no one around. No windows were open.
Yeah.
Like this stuff actually happened while at the house. And like I was 16, 17 maybe. And so like as a younger girl alone in a house that you're like staging for people to come and buy the house, it was super creepy. And like these things happened. Like there was definitely something upstairs at some point. There was definitely like someone opened and closed doors, and then just like other like I don't know if this has ever happened. Have you ever gone into a place
Yes.
and there's just a feeling
Oh God, yes.
of like there's clearly something here.
The energy is off.
But that sometimes can be, I just want to play devil's advocate just for the sake of, that can be yourself kind of projecting that from all the reading and the stories that you've already heard, right? Like, I would walk into places like this with these stories on my mind. So then if I saw something or I heard something out of the corner of my eye, or like I thought I heard something, I'd immediately go back to being like, whoop.
And say in the pirate house that you feel like standing outside of it, and especially in the courtyard.
Yeah.
People are like, you feel like menacing, like pirate-like spirits. Like it's jovial fun, but also like straight illegal.
Well,
and I think that's that's my favorite part of these stories is like ghosts are scary enough. Pirate ghosts, how fun.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't feel scared of those.
I'm
like
pumped for
They
pirate
just want to
ghosts.
have a good time.
there's like but I guess where I was going with that thought was in the house specifically was like I would feel like sick to my stomach, which was like a very weird thing to feel when you're just like doing something in the house and you're like, why do I feel like this? And it would only happen in the house. And so, like, in my mind,
Your body was
there
like,
was
get
some
out.
kind of connection there,
Yeah.
which, like, you hear these stories of, like, all the different houses and stuff. Like, I wonder if these people also felt these physical, you know, like with the one guy feeling something, like, down his spine. Like, that's, like, a sensation.
Sure.
That, like, obviously, you know, to what you were saying, Deena, is like sometimes I think it is your mind playing tricks on you, but then there's
My
also
mind's a
like
scary place.
That's the thing. Like, I don't know. It feels like
I think I've read too much.
I don't
I've
know.
watched too much. I've done too many of those things that when I put myself in these situations, like, unless it's going to be something right in my face that I cannot dispute,
Right.
I'm always going to be like, nah, I just made it up.
Yeah.
Like, I did it to myself.
Fair.
You know, and I
Yeah.
blame my mother. Sorry, Mom. Because she used to always tell me that I was imagining things and make me go back to bed, even though I did not want to sleep by myself. So I just have her in my head going, just made it up.
Yeah.
It's fine, you know?
Which is a good way to be if you like spooky things, because you can very easily get freaked out.
I
by-
think I do the
I
opposite.
With how scared I am of mostly everything, I don't know how. Like, this is the...
Yeah.
I do the opposite because it's so hard for me to get scared. I convince myself, I'm like, that was a ghost.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, it's just me dropping something, you know, but
Yeah.
I like the feeling of being scared. So sometimes I think I manifest it. But this is what I want to ask before we wrap up this episode. Did you guys feel that in any of your... I mean, like, we know Deena's story, but we are saving that.
Yeah.
That's good. But I do want to know, did you guys like feel that energy anywhere that you went?
The only one, so we did, the tour that we did when we went to Charleston was a horse-drawn carriage ride. So we
How
weren't
romantic.
like walking, I know, right? It was spooky because it was at night. So we definitely had the feeling of, like, depending on where you were riding past, the only spot that I felt like an uneasy feeling, I guess, was a church that we went by, and they told this story about a screaming banshee. And it was this like intense woman who like people would hear her screaming.
Maybe
at
it was our
night.
girl Zoe looking for her sister.
Exactly. Like there's so many versions of that. But that was the only, and I think because the story was so like, whoa, like hundreds of bodies were buried in this cemetery on top of each other. It was like a mass grave. And I think like when you actually think about that and you're on the tour, it's like, oh, wow. Like, that's heavy.
Now,
and,
like Stede Bonnet, who was our story that we started the episode with, that is, everyone says that they can feel his ghost in the tree that he was hanged.
Yeah.
The tree that he was hanged. We had to look this up.
Yeah.
Don't
we wanted
judge
to make
us,
sure we were
but we wanted to make sure we were grammatically correct.
Yeah.
In the tree that he was hanged. And they say that he is one of the main ghosts.
Yeah.
Because he was
the space.
hanged. Cheese and rice. He was hanged in Charleston. So a lot of people say that they hear him and see him walking up and down the streets, which again, I just want to see a pirate ghost.
Well, that was a big trial too. I mean, it was the Charleston pirate trials of 1718, I believe, was when. So it was him as well as, I want to say like 30 other pirates. Yeah, it was a significant amount of them. I could see them all kind of like getting to the pearly gates and being like, no. We still got work to do.
And then finding out Blackbeard put his treasure underneath the pirate house. Of course you're going back to get that.
Exactly.
Blackbeard took your ship.
Yeah. I will say there was like Stede Bonnet's backstory. I don't know if you read this, but I thought it was the funniest thing I've ever read.
Please share.
Because we've been saying how these pirates weren't these big, bad, scary men, right? That a lot of them seem to have been kind of cowardly.
Yeah.
I read that Bonnet not only was married, but he had 3 kids. He was this well-respected planter. So I'm getting this like very white guy image in my mind, you know? And he's been married for 9 years out of nowhere, allegedly. It says he had these legal papers drawn to allow his wife and his 2 friends to oversee his affairs. He got on a sloop, armed himself, hired a crew, and he was out. And
I'm so jealous of that.
Legit, everyone, including his wife, was like, what just happened? And he literally was like, peace out. Yeah. And just decided to become a pirate.
I mean, it sounds so good.
Do you ever wonder if all these pirates just came up, like they made their own stories and like just started telling like one guy and then the guy would tell another guy and then another, you know, like it's just like word of mouth stories that like get worse and worse the further along. Like did you ever play like telephone as like a kid where like you tell the first person something and then by the time it gets to the end, it's something completely different. You're like, seriously?
Imagine like you leave the port and then you come back to the port and you hear new stories and you're like, that went out.
Who is that guy?
Yeah.
Like that they're talking.
Did you ever watch The Witcher? The guy, the guy
Did you ever watch
the guy
Witcher?
that sings the song?
Yes.
The Baird?
Jock.
Shock.
The Bard.
Yeah.
The Bard.
Yeah.
The Bard of our gentleman pirate here.
Yeah.
But the Bard was him.
Yeah, exactly.
Singing his own tales.
But like, how else the stories get told, right?
Absolutely.
If you're not telling your story, then how is anyone going to know about it?
And
Exactly, especially when there was
there's no written
record. Yeah.
Right.
records, which kind of is a good lead-in for, we're going to, wrap this episode up. But next week, we are talking about all the haunted homes and the churchyards and the graveyards. And
We know graveyards are my thing.
all of those things surrounding that.
Yeah.
But
And really, some of them are beautiful.
Beautiful,
we really
of course.
We got to throw a nod there too, because some of the cemeteries are just stunning.
Charleston as a whole, like the whole town, if it's considered a town,
Charlestown is what it was originally called.
is beautiful. It's a beautiful little big place
With a muddy backstory
with
that we
a
will
very dark.
very dark backstory that we will
Hashtag it's
cover.
complicated.
It's very complicated, and we're going to talk about that next week. But we wanted to kick season 2 off with something super fun. Pirates are fun.
Different, yeah.
It's different. It's fun, and it's a great way to talk about this because that's part of the history of how this city was formed.
Yep. Excellent.
So that's it for this one, but we will be back next week. And as always, head over to our social media.
Yeah. If you guys want to dive deeper into the stories that we talked about today, you can head over to our website as well and get all the nitty gritty.
Yeah, we're going to put all of our sources up for our stories this season, kind of like we did for our season 1. So if you guys want to dive deeper into this, and again, if you have a creepy Charleston haunting story, share it with us, because
Please.
we're going to start doing some extra content and we could read some of those.
Yeah,
That'd
definitely.
be fun.
And any like imagery that we talked about, so any of the houses, any of that kind of stuff, we will put up on socials as well, so you guys can actually see what we're talking about.
You can see the visuals.
They're great. So
Yeah, and for any of you literary fans out there, so much reading material
Oh,
on
excellent.
this that
Excellent.
we have a huge book list that
Yeah.
you can add to your TBR. And if you find anything good, definitely send it our way too, because we will gobble that up.
And we are nerds.
Yep.
So that's it. Okay.
Until next time, guys.
We'll see you soon.
Bye. Folktown is a production of Gotham West Studios. Our editor is Katie Yonner. Our associate producer is Grace Heerman. Our production coordinator is Nicole Vargas. Our senior content producer is Kyle Bosch. Our director of marketing is Dayelle Watts, and our executive producer is Tommy West. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Folktown Podcast.
Primary Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Now is the time to make a plan. Whether you plan to vote absentee by mail, in person at your county auditor's office before Election Day, or at your polling place on June 4th, it's important you take steps now to make your plan at voterready.iowa.gov. Remember, Election Day is Tuesday, June 4th. Find more info at voterready.iowa.gov. This message is presented by the Iowa Secretary of State.